Hello everybody, Intuition here. Thank you as always for making time and space for us. Today we will discuss the topic of grief and what grief is. Before we get into grief, it is important to understand where grief comes from, and grief is, of course, a feeling. And all feelings are simply states of being. And states of being put you in a literal and figurative place. And that place is restricted by the state. And a state, again, has boundaries and limitations that make it a place. So, grief keeps you stuck in a place that is a state. And that state is a remembrance, a memory, if you will, of the past. Because beyond feelings being a state that puts you in a place, a feeling has its roots in that of the past. And the only thing that a feeling really has to remind you of the past is an image. And so those images will reflect whatever it is that you are perceiving a loss about, that then therefore keeps you in a state that keeps you locked up in a place that allows the fueling of that feeling to get bigger and bigger and bigger and to become all-consuming. So why do we care? Who cares? What does it matter? If grief is a state, a place, up, down, side to side, who gives a shit? It is important to understand what grief allows, because again, what we just said, grief creates a state that puts you in a place. That place allows the imagery of the past to live. And then therefore, grief is dually positive as it is negative for many people. There is a pro to being in grief. The pros to being grief is the fact that you are keeping something alive that is dead. You cannot really do that with any other feeling. Grief, again, allows for the creation of a state that creates a place in which memories can fill you up. And though you are being filled up with the visceral feeling of sadness, the subconscious mind will tell you that that feeling of sadness is better than the illusion of the emptiness that you will feel when you let go of that grief, because it means that that person, that thing, that object that you're grieving over is really gone. And then what will you have? Grief allows the illusion of keeping something alive that is no longer here with us. And if you genuinely have loved that thing, weren't ready to let go of that thing, were over-identified with the role that that thing provided to you, which added a sense of comfort and stability to you that you felt you could not have otherwise, then you will go through whatever cost necessary in order to keep that thing alive a little bit longer so that you have that sense of connection and safety that that object that you no longer have provided you. And so, for many people, they will say, well, I do not want to be in this grief anymore. I do not want to continue to hold on to it. But again, they're holding on to it for a reason. And the reason is the illusion that if I hold on to it, then it is with me forever. It cannot leave me. It will never die because, again, the grief is from a feeling, and the feeling creates a state, and that state creates a place, and that place fills with images, and those images help to keep and fuel that feeling alive, and that feeling touches my heart, similarly to how that object or that thing did when it was in form with me. And so, if it touches my heart, similarly to how it was when it was in form with me, then it is almost like that they are there with me. That object is there with me. Because pain is really just the inverse of pleasure, is it not? And so if pain is the inverse of pleasure, then the illusion would be, all I have to do is balance out this pain, and maybe there's pleasure on the other side, the same pleasure that I felt when they were here in existence with me. But all of that is simply an illusion, Because as you keep that grief alive within you, that false imaging of that object, of that person alive within you, you are literally killing yourself. Because again, grief is a state which puts you in a very restricted place. That restricted place is very rigid in its boundary, and you cannot break free from that boundary unless you discard it altogether. And so if you insist on staying in grief, then that means that you are not allowing yourself enough room to grow, enough room for you to stretch, enough room for you to continue to evolve and meet the present moment with where it is that it is at. And if you are not willing or able to do that, then you will die, because you need space to grow. You cannot live in a box. You need to stretch. You need to move from the box. Your bones need to be able to move itself so that they can support the whole structural frame, the bones, the muscular system that you are. Likewise, you cannot live in a box. You have to get up and eat. You have to drink some water. You can't keep on pooping and peeing in the box. At some point, you have to get up, or you will die. And so, grief has a dual nature, because though many people say that they don't want to be in grief, grief is beneficial in a subconscious way, because again, in the backhanded way, it allows that person, that object, that thing to continue to be alive, even though we know that it is no longer with us. That is why you hear the term, the phrase, grief has no expiration date. It has no time limit. And that is so. That is very true. It has no time limit, has no expiration date, because again, it is a state. And that state creates a place. And that state is suspended in time, in a timelessness. Because the timelessness is based of that in the past, because it is an image of the past. So literally, the time has already passed, and that means that the grief is suspended in time, in a timelessness, endlessness, that you could stay in forever, until of course you die. So it is important to understand what grief allows, because again, when you understand that grief serves a double nature, that there's a benefit to grief, in the sense of it is keeping something alive that I know is gone and I'm not ready to part with, then you could start addressing that and be in awareness of how grief is serving you in both the positive and the negative, so that you can really start to move forward, potentially, if that is your choice, and not continue to grieve under the illusion that it is keeping something alive that cannot be any longer for you. Because when you understand that, then you move past grief and move into the reality of now. And in the reality of now, you have no over-identification with the thing that is no longer here with us. You have an identification of yourself, which is more important than the over-identification that you had with that other thing. And when you remember your identification to yourself, you remember that now I can honor that thing that is past, as opposed to holding on to it, hoping that it comes back into form by me putting myself in the past and not moving into the present moment. So when we understand what grief really is, there is a potentiality, if you want it, to move past grief altogether. Because if we hold on to grief forever, we will die. Might be a very slow death, but nevertheless a death. First energetically, then emotionally, then physically. Because you cannot hold on to the past. You cannot live in the past. The past has literally passed. And when you hold on to that knowing, then that allows you to meet yourself in the present. And when you meet yourself in the present, then that means that you could honor all the things that have passed with dignity and grace, and allowing the release of what it is that needs to be let go of, so that you can move on to your next phase, state, place. So We simply wish to remind you of what grief really is. Have a better understanding of what it is that you're doing when you are holding on to grief, so that there's a potential for you to make a different choice. You could grieve, you could kick, you could scream, you could yell, you could throw yourself against a wall. But when you're done and you've released that, then find yourself in the next moment, this moment, not the moment of the past that the grief is holding over you, eluding you, making you think that you are in a present moment. Find yourself in this moment, and then ask yourself, how can I honor myself and the thing that is past, so that we can both meet each other in a new way. The thing that is passed on and myself can start forming a new relationship in this moment, as opposed to me holding on to the past, which is holding me in a memory that is not serving me anything other than an illusion. As always, we are full of gratitude for you making time and space for us, and we wish you well in all of your endeavors and in finding yourself in the present moment, the most important moment of all, where you could be in a new place and state and evolve into all it is that you are meant to be. Thank you.